Hi, welcome. This is Sir CJ, and this is a developmental reading. This is based on the book written by Araceli M. Villamin, Evelyn S. Salazar, and Wilhelmina Gatmaitan. Ayan. So before we conclude the first video, formally conclude with the contents of the first video, which is about DR1, what is reading, let us first have a checkpoint related to it. Okay? So what you'll be doing is you're going to be writing the correct answer on the blank that is provided for you. And you will be getting your answer from the following word box. So, eto sila. So, the first column, there is the term rate, and then decoding, and then reading, perception, comprehension, reaction, integration, phonetic analysis, structural analysis, context clues, and efficient reader. Ayan. So, let's first have the item number one. The item number one. Alright, so a basic tool for learning in all subject areas. And which among those terms do you think is the correct answer? For the second number, the ability to recognize and produce the word as a meaningful unit. And then for the third one, which among those terms in the word box corresponds to the ability to judge accuracy, quality, or worth. If you need more time, I suggest that you pause this video. But if you're done, let us move on to the fourth item. Okay, for the fourth item, the fusion of meanings of separate words into a chain of related ideas. Fifth item, the ability to assimilate idea or concept into one's background of experience. For the sixth item, the speed of reading, which varies according to the reader's purpose. Again, if you need more time, you can pause this video. But if you're done, let us proceed with the seventh item. Analysis of word structure according to its roots and affixes. Item number 8, analysis by relating the sound of the spoken word to its visual or graphemic symbol. If you need more time, you know what to do. Pause this video. But if you're done, let's now proceed with the last two items. Item number 9, one who evaluates, challenges, and criticizes reading materials. And for item number 10, the process of changing the printed word or symbol into ideas or meaningful units. Alright. I think we can proceed now with the checking your work. Let's begin with the first three items. Alright, for item number 1, the basic tool for learning in all subjects basically is reading. Alright, for the second item, the ability to recognize and pronounce the word as a meaningful unit, the answer is perception. Alright, for the third item, the ability to judge accuracy, quality, or worth, the answer is reaction. How do you do so far? Let's now proceed with the fourth, fifth, and the sixth item, shall we? Alright, for the fourth item, the correct answer is comprehension. For the fifth item, the answer is integration, the ability to assimilate idea or concept into one's background of experience. And then for the sixth item, the speed of reading, which varies according to the reader's purpose, that is, of course, rate. I hope that you got 6 items correctly so far. Let's now proceed with the 7th and the 8th item. For the 7th item, which word or which term refers to the analysis of word structure according to its roots and affixes. So it's structural. Actually, the complete answer for that is structural analysis. But since we already have the word analysis, it's fine if you just wrote structural. Now for item number 8, the correct answer is phonetic analysis. All right, now down to the last two items number 9 and 10. So for item number 9, this is someone who evaluates, challenges, and criticizes reading materials. Okay, so obviously it's the efficient reader. For item number 9, the process of changing the printed word or symbol into ideas or meaningful units, the answer is decoding. How did you do? All right. So if you guys got a score of 10 over 10, that means you fully grasped the meaning of the first DR. Okay, so you are now very much ready for DR 2. Remember, we're still in the first chapter, the nature and psychology of reading. But this time we are in DR 2, which is processes that affect reading. For the first slide, we will be looking at how Miles Zintz analyzed and described the processes that affect reading. We are basically going to dive in the different kinds of factors, the different factors that affect reading, and we're going to look at reading as something that is being defined by many different angles, according to Miles Zintz. So yeah, there is not just one angle in which we can define reading. So for the first one, reading is a social process. Kapag sinabi nating social, ang usually nag-enter na meaning sa mga minds natin, it's the way a group of people interact with each other. Like it's not just like something that happens within the mind of a person. It is something that happens between two people or among group of people, right? So the first angle we have to look at, it's how reading becomes a social process. According to Miles Zintz, it is affected by one's attitudes, loyalties, conflicts, and prejudices. Attitudes, it is the way a person reacts to a particular situation or maybe to a particular kind of person. Loyalties naman, the people with which a person attaches him, her, or themselves. And then in mga conflicts nila, and usually conflicts are really between people, right? Pero syempre may mga conflicts din naman that are internal, so within the person. But in this context, we are actually talking about yung mga conflicts na dinefine natin formerly. And then yung mga prejudices natin, the way we look at people and our prejudices. It is augmented by social acceptance, by self-reliance, and cooperation in a group. Now, by saying it means reading. Reading is augmented by social acceptance. So, when a person is reading, the person is also considering some aspects of what is being read based on the acceptance of the society they are living in. So, if the reader is reading a material and the material has some say for instance some sexual themes that are not quite appropriate for the society that the reader is living in, of course ang mangyayari doon is magkakaroon ng mga reactions yung reader towards that text. So yeah, because of the acceptance of the society the reader is living in, of the kind of sexual theme being featured by the text, naapektuhan yung reading experience. Ayan. So the first process or the first aspect, the first angle with which reading could be defined in this case is reading is a social process. For the second one, reading is a psychological process. Okay, so how one feels about oneself and about others affects the reading process. Yung mga emotional stability determines one's comfort in the reading situation. May mga defense mechanism din na na-involve. So, inhibition, which is like much similar with repression actually. Projection, aggression, rationalization, and nervousness are actually responses to anxiety in all types of situations. So, basically, for the second one, reading Tao is a psychological process. We can never really put away the fact that reading is providing some kind of a stimuli, right? And then the reader will also be providing some kind of a response in the process. If the reader finds himself inhibiting certain responses or maybe projecting their own emotions, their own problems dun sa emotions and problems nung mismong binabasa nila, like they are relating to to a particular character in whatever they're reading, or maybe if the reader finds himself or herself or themselves to be parang reasoning their way through the reading process, like they are actually looking for connections, for parang justifications of what is happening in the text. That becomes actually much like a psychological process. Like if you're gonna look at it, they're just reading, but that particular act is becoming now a psychological process. Now, a person who is emotionally stable, who is, kumbaga, as we may define a person who is emotionally stable, like they don't in as much as possible, they don't lie sa mga sarili nila about their own emotions. They're very much honest about their emotions, or maybe they have a healthy emotional relationship with themselves and with people around them. Then we can just actually expect that same person to be very much comfortable in reading particular novels that may or actually affect him, her, or them. Ayan. So it's not just social process, it's also a psychological process. For the next one, reading is a physiological process. Ang involved naman dito is not just the mind, not just other people, but also the body of the reader themselves. Okay, so again, ang nire-relate natin dito is how reading becomes a physiological process. So a person who would like to be really good at reading must have or must execute all mechanical skills efficiently that are associated with reading, such as eye-hand coordination, some fine motor skills, some kind of a good verbal expression. Dapat magaling din siya when it comes to auditory and visual discrimination. When a reader reads, we are actually stopping. It's just like we're just actually stopping at each word to actually comprehend them. Reading happens when we're sweeping through lines and where our eyes are stopping at each word to sort of like decode them, so that the whole idea so that the idea becomes whole in our minds. Yan. So if a person finds it very difficult to focus on a particular line of print, that might affect the reading experience. So again, reading is a physiological process. So if a person has some physiological difficulties, it will be very hard for that person to have a satisfying reading experience. For the next angle with which Miles Zins views reading is that it is a perceptual process. Perception, it is the ability to receive, to process signals or stimuli. Ayan. So it utilizes some perceptual clues such as sizes, shape, color, combinations of sounds and letters, figure-ground relationships, and the relationships of the part of a whole, ordering and sequencing. what we have to understand about reading is that it provides us with a lot of stimuli. Usually when we're like reading, ang naisip lang natin words, diba? Pero actually, ang daming napoprovide na stimuli dyan. We just have to be really good at taking note of them, because being good at taking note of such stimuli means that we can enjoy the reading experience at its whole. Kumbaga, we are going to experience it at its full. Ganon. When we're reading, we're pretty much sure that the writer has provided us with all of the necessary stimuli, and sometimes even more, right? So if we still end up not having a perfect picture of what we're reading, despite such an elaborate description, a detailed description of the character, of the action, of the situation, then I think we have to practice stopping at each word more often, and really grasping the thought that each word has for us. Ayan. So again, reading is a perceptual process. The next one is reading is a linguistic process. It is a process of the language. Well, basically, siguro, ang masasabi natin dito is, hindi naman natin maiintindihan yung kwento na nakasulat kung hindi naman natin naiintindihan yung language kung saan siya nakasulat, di ba? If it's written in a language you don't really know how to speak, or you don't really understand, then you won't really understand the thing, right? But say it is written in a language that you actually understand. So what do you have to take note? Reading being a linguistic process, you have to take note of the sound-symbol relationships, yung intonation, yung stress, yung rhythm, yung pausing, and yung tone sequences. What you have to know is that there are several words in our languages na applicable actually sila, or parang they are kumbaga they're more appropriately used for particular kinds of situations. Like if you're gonna be talking about pretty, it's different from beautiful. They just mean two different things, even though they're synonymous. They mean two different things. Like pretty is much like more immature kind of beauty, and that beautiful is actually more matured. Or maybe if you're talking about something that is more regal, or maybe it's sophisticated. So you know what I mean? There are just words that are more appropriate for a particular kind of situation. Also, being good at reading means that you also get figurative language, and you also get slang. And that's why it's quite difficult to read a novel, or to read articles that are written in different levels of languages na hindi tayo sanay, 'di ba? So merong may mga ilan sa atin na sobrang sanay magbasa ng mga highly academic papers. Meron namang ilan sa atin na kung sanay sila sa mga highly academic papers at pinagbasa mo sila ng mga articles that are written in lower level languages, not really lower level, parang kumbaga in articles that are written in more diversified and localized languages, it will be very difficult for them. Ayan. So reading is indeed a linguistic process. And then the next one is that reading is an intellectual process. The mind is very much activated by stimuli that we read, right? So when we're reading, our minds are actively doing the following functions. So our memory is activated, our vocabulary is also activated. Although kung hindi siya activated, may mga parts na confused tayo, there's always a dictionary beside us, right, to help us out. Verbal reasoning, perceiving relationships of words, yung generalization natin, critical judgment, and accommodation to extreme individualized differences. What is so good about reading fiction, tas mga stories talaga sila, is that we get to have this chance to feel what other people are feeling. You know what I mean? Like, despite the fact that usually yung mga binabasa nating characters, they are just made up. Like, they don't really exist. They don't, they haven't even lived. They never did. They never existed. They're not real. But we feel for them, right? Whenever they're describing the love of their lives, we feel for them. Like, we just want them to be happy. We want them to have the success that they were craving for, or they were like dreaming of, working so hard to get, right? Like, there are times when we actually feel the characters, and we can relate to them. Now, relating to them requires the following. So, if there are words that tend to describe what they're feeling right now, but those words seem unfamiliar, then our vocabulary is being challenged. So, since reading is an intellectual process, for us to actually feel for the character, we actually have to do something that is much more intellectual, which is understanding the words first, right? Ayan. So, these are the descriptions of Miles Zins for what reading actually means. Now, all of those foregoing discussions emphasize the fact that reading is a complex process. It is indeed a very complex process. It is actually composed of skills and abilities na nag-range from simple recognition of words to association of past experiences, and the printed form, grasping meaning, and interpreting and applying the ideas gained from the printed page. What I really want you to grasp here, kumbaga, what I really want us to dwell on here is that reading is as a process is involving yung pagtingin mo sa page tas may mga words siyang nakasulat. It involves that particular recognition to what is happening in our minds. So when you were like reading those words in that particular string, you understand them through your mind, and sometimes in your heart you also understand what they mean, right? Like, say for instance, in this one book that I am currently reading, yung amount of affection that that this character has for his love is very much described in the, on I mean dun sa book. Like, the book kasi was written from the point of view of this guy. Ayan. And then, dun sa book, pinapakita lahat ng mga emotions niya, lahat ng mga thoughts niya, and even, syempre, yung mga dialogues nila. And whenever I'm reading yung mga hindi niya sinasabi, at saka yung mga sinasabi niya, you relate to it, right? Because at some point in your life, in my life, I actually had the same experience. Like, I really wanted to say something, but I just kept it to myself. And that same emotion was evoked a couple of times when I was reading this book. When I was reading the point of view of this particular character. It's not even the author of this particular character in the book. That is reading. For the next part, what we have to look at are the following. These are the skills that are being described by William S. Gray, pero actually parang naalala ko, parang related ito dun sa first DR natin. Okay, so what William S. Gray here is doing is that he's spelling out these manifold skills and abilities needed in the successful reading or act. So you see that the first one, recognition, is very much familiar to you. So, yung reader, ang gagawin muna niya is, syempre, i-recognize mo na yung word. Kapag hindi mo na-recognize yung word, you can't really proceed with reading the text. So, you really have to learn the language or define the words. Okay? Then once you learn the language and you define the words, you would be able to grasp the ideas presented. And therefore, yung first step mo, which is recognition, is successful. Ayan. For the second step, the reader will then reflect on the significance of the words, relate to them or relate them with each other, and see their implications. In this case, the reader is already comprehending. So, iniintindihan niya kaagad na niya ngayon kung ano yung text na binabasa niya. Kumbaga, not just the word or the words themselves, he is actually looking at the text, at that part of the text as a whole already, comprehending it. And then, if he is to benefit from those ideas, kung halimbawa, like, it so happened that curious siya about those ideas, and he knows that if he's gonna continue reading, yung need niya is going to be satisfied, the reader will react thoughtfully to what he is reading by weighing its values and the soundness of judgments and conclusions, or apprehends the context as to value and significance. So, ang gagawin ng reader niyan is kapag medyo, yun nga, para nakita yung pakinabang niya in reading the text, i-weigh na niya yung value at saka yung soundness ng judgments and conclusions. Ngayon, kapag hindi naman niya gaanong nakikita yung value or yung soundness and judgment and conclusions, ang gagawin niya is hahanapin niya yun. Ayan. So, there are times talaga when we're reading an article, especially academic ones, na hindi talaga lumilitaw kaagad para dun sa reader yung hinahanap niya. And I think that usually happens like sa atin, di ba? Na meron talaga tayong hinahanap pero di natin mahanap, pero alam nating nandun siya. So, ang gagawin natin, we're really going to scrutinize the text so we see yung value niya at saka yung kanyang significance. And that is already a way of reacting to the text. Ayan. Now, the last step, according to William S. Gray, is if the text actually helps him, the reader applies the ideas acquired to solve problems or to direct his own activities. Whether it's fiction or non-fiction, let us admit it, na we get affected by the texts that we read, right? And then, in a way, we're also being directed, not just affected, directed by the characters, by the facts that we read about. And that is application. Right? So, recognition, comprehension, reaction, and application. Did you take note of them? Very well. Now, that is William S. Gray, and I think we are now up for another checkpoint. So this is developmental reading, fact processes that affect reading, your checkpoint. It is actually very similar dun sa una nating ginawa. Alright, so ang gagawin lang din natin dito, you're going to be writing the correct answer on the blank provided for you. So, this is the word box this time. Mas mahahaba yung mga terms natin. Ayan, so from the first column, social process, physiological, psychological, a linguistic process, a perceptual process, an intellectual process, reaction, comprehension, affective, application, recognition, and reflection. Let's now jump on the first item. So, number 1, the reader recognizes the words and grasps the ideas presented. So, what do you think is this? Okay, so which among those terms in the box do you think is being described by the first item? How about the second item? He reflects on their significance, relates to them, and sees their implications. For the third item, he reacts thoughtfully by weighing its values and soundness of judgments and conclusions. Alright, if you need more time, you know what to do. Just pause this video. But if you're done, let us now proceed with the fourth item. He uses the ideas to solve problems or to direct his own activities. Number 5, it shows how one feels about himself and how others affect his reading performance. Number 6, they are skills in auditory and visual discrimination, verbal expression, and eye-hand coordination. If you need more time, you can pause this video. But if you're through, let's now proceed with the next items, number 7 and 8. For number 7, it utilizes cues such as combination of sounds and letters, size, shape, and color. For item number 8, it is dependent on vocabulary, memory, verbal reasoning, generalizing, and critical judgment. If you're still answering these items, you can pause this video. But if you're done, let's now proceed with the last two items, items number 9 and 10. For item number 9, it requires sound symbol relationships, understanding of intonation, stress, rhythm, and tone sequences. For the last item, it is affected by one's attitudes, loyalties, conflicts, and prejudices. If you're still answering, you can pause this video. If you want to review the previous items, you can always go back, okay? But if you're done, let us now answer or check your let's now check your work. For items number 1 to 3, for item number 1, the reader recognizes the words and grasps the ideas presented. That is recognition. So your keyword there is recognizes. For the second item, he reflects on their significance, relates them, and sees their implications. You know full well that is comprehension. For item number 3, he reacts thoughtfully by weighing its values and the soundness of judgments and conclusions. I think you have your keyword there. It's reaction. For the next 3 items, item number 4, he uses the ideas to solve problems or to direct his own activities. You know full well it's application. For item number 5, it shows how one feels about himself and how others affect his reading performance. That is psychological. For item number 6, they are skills in auditory and visual discrimination, verbal expression, and eye-hand coordination. That is physiological. Your keyword, I think, for that one is eye-hand coordination. Next items number 7 and 8, it utilizes cues such as combination of sounds and letters, size and shape, and color. Alright, it is a perceptual process. For item number 8, it's an intellectual process because ang involved na dyan is vocabulary, memory, verbal reasoning, generalizing, and critical judgment. For the last 2 items, item number 9, it requires sound symbol relationships, understanding of intonation, stress, rhythm, and tone sequences. So, what do you think is this? It is a linguistic process. And for item number 10, it is affected by one's attitudes, loyalties, conflicts, and prejudices. The correct answer is, it is a social process. So I think this is the very first angle with which we can view reading that we discussed in this video lesson. How many items did you get correctly? I hope you performed really well. Alright. This is DR2 or Developmental Reading 2, processes that affect reading. Remember that we are still in the first chapter of Developmental Reading. This is Sir CJ and I hope that I will see you in the next video lesson.